It was 10 below zero on Christmas Eve when my father locked me out for daring to say the turkey was dry. At first, I thought it was just another lecture in the cold, another petty demonstration of authority. But when minutes became an hour, and I watched my family open gifts through the window like I was a ghost, the humiliation landed with a weight that felt bigger than holiday discipline. By then, months of failure already sat on my shoulders. My tech startup had collapsed after I ran out of runway 6 months too early. Bankruptcy didn't just take my assets, it stripped away my sense of forward momentum. With no income and no fallback, I returned to Aspen to live with my father, Gregory, his new wife Patricia, and my stepsister Reese, who had always treated my existence as an inconvenience. Living there meant accepting a daily subscription of dignity taxes, silences I had to swallow, micro-critiques about my failure to launch, and endless comparisons to Reese's carefully curated academic accomplishments. Out in the snow, I was wearing only a thin cardigan. My hands burned first, then went numb. I saw my father raise a glass inside the window, laughing as though the scene outside was irrelevant to him. That was when the black limousine appeared, long and silent, its tires crunching over the ice. It came to a stop at the curb without hesitation. The door opened and my grandmother Josephine stepped out. She was a figure I remembered vaguely from childhood holidays, though those memories were more rumor than relationship. The family whispered about her as if she were a kind of corporate myth, a woman who sold a chain of biotech companies, navigated hostile takeovers, and retired with more liquid cash than the rest of our family tree combined. I hadn't seen her in 7 years. She looked at me in the snow, then at the house. She didn't ask questions. She issued a single command to her security detail. Extract. 2 men in black suits moved like a specialized unit professional, swift, uninterested in domestic politics. They lifted me out of the snow, as though retrieving a compromised asset, placing me gently into the limo. Heat hit my skin like fire. Josephine tossed a wool trench coat over me without ceremony. "Arms through," she said. Her voice contained no pity, no softness, only efficiency. Hypothermia is inconvenient and tedious to treat. I fumbled with the sleeves, teeth chattering. The interior smelled of leather and heat-filtered air. My grandmother sat across from me, composed, watching the house through tinted glass. She did not ask if I was hurt. That would come later, in her own way. My father stood inside the warm glow of the living room, smiling for his new family. He did not notice that the game on the board had changed. "You think he did that because of a turkey critique?" Josephine finally said, eyes still on the window. "But cruelty at that scale is never about the stated offense. Weak men punish to confirm their own power." I stared at her, unsure how to respond. "You are his battery," she continued. "Your humiliation keeps his lights on." The coat warmed my shaking limbs. I tried to explain that I'd come home because I had nowhere else to go be, 'cause the startup failed and bankruptcy devoured the remainder of my pride, but the words felt small. Josephine listened, and when I finished, she summarized with unsettling accuracy. "You attempted something difficult. They attempt nothing. That is the root of their resentment." She pressed an intercom button and said 2 words to her driver. "Cut power." A moment later, the lights in the house went out. The Christmas tree died. The living room froze. We watched through security feeds routed to the center console. My father, suddenly robbed of the stage lighting he relied upon, paced the room in confusion. Patricia lit candles, trying to reassert control through ambient. Reese complained about losing Wi-Fi. Their reactions were individual case studies in vanity, unmasked by minor crisis. Josephine waited precisely 3 minutes long enough for irritation to turn to unease before ordering the power restored. When the lights flickered back on, Gregory rushed outside, his coat half-buttoned, scanning for the cause of the outage. Only then did he notice the limousine. Recognition spread across his face in slow horror. Josephine lowered the window. She did not raise her voice. "She won't be staying here anymore." My father sputtered through objections that I was living there by choice, that I needed structure, that he was just trying to teach responsibility. Josephine cut him off with the same precision she once used to cut failing divisions from a balance sheet. "You are not competent to teach anything," she said. You are merely competent to consume, and you consume the autonomy of others to feel tall. Gregory tried to claim it was just a joke, that locking me out was temporary, that I was exaggerating, but his voice lacked conviction, and the snow on my cardigan told the true version of events. Josephine did not argue further. She simply closed the window. The conversation was over. The car pulled away. As the mansion shrank in the distance, the adrenaline faded and my body began to ache from thawing out of the cold. The warmth in the limo was almost enough to make me cry, but I held myself together out of habit. Vulnerability, at home, had always been punished. It would take time to relearn that safety did not require silence. Josephine watched me, as though evaluating a distressed asset, not with judgment, more with curiosity. "Tell me about the company," she said. So, I did. I explained my algorithm, the timing problem, the market friction, and the funding cliff I hit before adoption caught up. She asked precise questions, not about my failure, but about the structural weaknesses that led to it. It was the first time in months someone treated my collapse as a case study rather than a punchline. When I finished, she nodded once. Failure is not terminal. Staying in proximity to people who benefit from your brokenness is. That sentence landed harder than anything my father had thrown at me in the previous 3 months. I realized then that Gregory's cruelty hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been escalating through smaller acts I chose to ignore. First came the jokes about debt, then the critiques of my work ethic, then the expectation that I run errands and chores to earn my keep. Each act a degree on the dial. By the time the blizzard came, the door closing behind me felt almost rational. The limo delivered me to Josephine's winter estate overlooking the frozen forest. The staff didn't gawk at me or question my presence. A doctor checked my vitals. A chef prepared soup. A guest suite was prepared with quiet efficiency. I had forgotten what it felt like to be treated without condescension. That night, as I lay under a heavy quilt, watching snow fall through the window, I finally understood why I had endured so much misery at home. I believed I deserved it because I failed. Josephine dismantled that belief with one sentence. Attempting something difficult is the only thing worth respecting. The next morning, she outlined terms: not affection, not cohabitation, but opportunity. If I wanted another shot at building the company, she would provide runway, advisory structure, and conditions that demanded rigor. It was not charity. It was investment. And for the first time since the collapse, I felt a future forming in the distance rather than collapsing behind me. The mansion in Aspen never reached out. No apology came. No explanation. The power dynamic had shifted, and men like Gregory only make contact when they believe leverage is on their side. Silence was confirmation he no longer had any. I left Aspen that spring. I left behind the version of myself who believed endurance was virtue. And I left behind a house where cruelty had been normalized in increments so small that I mistook survival for resilience. Leaving didn't erase the debt or magically restore my startup, but it severed the final tether to the idea that dignity must be earned through obedience. In time, I stopped thinking of that night as the night I got rescued. Instead, I thought of it as the night the thermostat finally broke and revealed how cold it had been all along.